Okay, welcome back. This week we're going to talk about MongoDB schema design. If you're coming from the world of relational databases, you know that there's a best ideal way to design your schema, which is to keep it in the third normal form. Now, you can keep data in the third normal form in MongoDB, and we'll talk a little bit about the third normal form in the next lesson. But in Mongo, it turns out that it's more important to keep the data in a way that's conducive to the application using the data. So, you think about your application data patterns. You think about what pieces of data are used together, what pieces of data are used mostly read-only, what pieces of data are written all the time, and then we're going to organize our data within MongoDB to specifically suit the application data access patterns. And that's a bit different from the world of relational, where instead you try to keep the data in a way that's agnostic to the application. All right, so let's go over some of the basic facts about MongoDB, just to remind you of them as we talk about schema design. The first is that MongoDB supports rich documents. And by rich documents, I mean that it's not just tabular data. In MongoDB, you can store an array of items, or a value for a certain key can be another document. And this is going to allow us to pre-join data for fast access. And that's important because, as you know, MongoDB doesn't support joins directly inside the kernel. Instead, if you want to do a join, you're going to have to join in the application itself. And of course, the reason we do this is because the joins are very hard to scale, and we want the system to be high performance. So as a result of this, you need to think ahead of time about what data you want to use together with other data, and if it's possible, you might want to embed it directly within a document. And we'll talk about how you do that. The next is that there are no constraints. Now, if you come from the world of relational, you might remember that you can have a foreign key constraint and ask that an attribute of one row in a table would form a foreign key into another table. And we don't have that in MongoDB, but it's going to turn out it's not as important as you might think because of embedding. Embedding is going to make that a little less important than it would otherwise be. All right? We're going to think about atomic operations. We don't support transactions, but we do support atomic operations within MongoDB, within one document. So we're going to think about how to organize our data to support atomic operations if we need them within our application. And the final thing is that there is no declared schema within MongoDB, but there's a pretty good chance that your application is going to have a schema. And by have a schema, I mean that every single document in a particular collection is probably going to have a pretty similar structure. And there might be some small changes to that structure depending on different versions of your application, but mostly each document in the collection is going to have a similar structure. And even though it's not declared ahead of time, it's important to think about that structure so that the data schema itself supports all the different features of your application. All right, so let's have a first quiz. The first quiz for schema design is: what's the single most important factor in designing your application schema within MongoDB? Is it making the design extensible, making it easy to read by a human, matching the data access patterns of your application, or keeping the data in third normal form? And just check one of those.